now that I'm almost at the end of my pregnancy, there's nothing in my life that I've done that's been more awe-inspiring than like 3D printing an entire human with my body, because all of this shit that we're told that we need to make us better and happier, and when we get to the next pay rise or the next number on the scale or whatever it might be, we'll feel better, and then we don't. And then we think it must be because we've done something wrong. It's because we're just constantly chasing something outside of ourselves, when actually we already have everything that we need within ourselves. I think I was part of this conversation myself before deciding to become a mum, where I was maybe even quite judgmental about motherhood, like it was some kind of anti-feminist choice. And I'm thinking, like, why do we think that it's better to slave away for the man? Why is that better than raising a child? Why is raising a child something that we're so dismissive of? And if not to shame any choice, I think choice is the most important part of all of it. But I don't know how often we stop to interrogate our dreams and ask whether they're actually ours, to again be accepted, and also to prove that we are exceptional.
Welcome to the 51%, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get back to basics when it comes to women's health. Through expert insights and powerful personal stories, we help you tune in to what really matters: your body, your well-being, your life. No one-size-fits-all advice, just real conversations to help you understand your health on your own terms. But before we dive in, I have a quick favour to ask. Please hit subscribe and join the 51% community on our website. It's free and it helps us grow, reach more women, and create events that really speak to the health and wealth challenges we all face. And finally, just so you know, everything shared on this podcast is for information only. It's not medical or financial advice, and always speak to a qualified expert for support. Sophie, welcome to the podcast. It is fantastic to have you on. Could you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you were doing before and what you're doing now?
Thank you for having me, Shreya. So my name's Sophie Jane Lee, and I run a brand storytelling studio called Electric Peach. And we specialise in working with non-profits, for-purpose organisations to help them tell better stories through the media, through social media, on stages, through their visual brand. And then I also work with women founders and leaders to help them use their voice with more impact and influence. And where that's led me to is to publish my first book, which came out in March, called Beyond Palatable, a Manifesto for Unapologetic Women. And that is about all of the ways that women are conditioned to shrink ourselves, to dull ourselves down, to appease everybody else and sacrifice our own needs, and the impact that that has on our physical and mental well-being.
Thank you so much. I mean, there is so much from that, to be honest. The first question I want to ask you is this word palatable. What does that mean for you?
I chose palatable because this conversation around women shrinking themselves and all of the impacts of that is not new, and I didn't create or invent any of these ideas. Yeah. But I wanted to own my own little slice of that space. And so I chose the word palatable because it wasn't being used in the context of women that much. And now I'm seeing it everywhere. So it's actually pretty cool, because I Googled who started this movement around palatability and moving into a different space. And on Google, it was like Sophie Jane Lee's work around this.
Yes.
Well, and because I've worked in marketing my whole career, obviously, I'm like, well, that's good. But what I mean by going beyond palatable is to no longer be prioritizing everybody else's needs, everybody else's comfort over our own needs and comfort. And the best way that I found to describe this is we are taught as women that we have to be acceptable, always. Do not make anyone uncomfortable. Do not push the boundaries. Do not be difficult. Do not be too much is a big one. But we're also taught that we need to be exceptional. And in my world especially, there's a lot of high-achieving women who are burning out. And so we're in this weird juxtaposition between acceptability and exceptionalism. And you can't be both of those things, because acceptable is just like bare minimum. And exceptional is one of a kind, standing out, shining your light. And so we're trying to be two things that are the opposites of one another. And that really is what Beyond Palatable is about. It's about getting rid of the idea of being acceptable in order to be your version of exceptional. So, and that doesn't have to be like out there changing the world. It can be whatever works for you.
Yeah. How can that be unpacked? Because at the end of the day, let's face it, you know, from the moment you're born, you're conditioned to behave in a certain way through either your parents, well, definitely your parents, and then later on your environment, your friends, your colleagues, and now social media. Before it was the magazines and things, and obviously TV, but now you've got that added layer of social media. So how can you unpack years and years of almost, I'd call it brainwashing, to kind of change the way you see yourself and really kind of get back to your authentic self, I guess?
It's definitely not easy. And it's actually centuries of conditioning for women, particularly for women from the global majority as well, because it's not all even and equal. And we're looking at centuries of women who didn't have any level of safety when it came to using their voice or being self-expressed. So it's really not like you can just wake up one day and be like, I'm not going to be conditioned by this anymore. And plus, we also have very clever systems that we exist within around advertising, marketing, constantly being sold that we're the problem and that we need to fix ourselves. And here's this wonderful thing you can buy, and that's the solution. So the first step is about being aware of the fact that we do exist within these systems and that we are brainwashed, and that a lot of our programmed responses to things are not who we really are, and that there is another way, even though it's not like you can just wake up one day and find that other way. But once you become more aware of it and more aware of the ways in which you are abandoning yourself for other things, then you can start to make small incremental changes. And one of the things that I wish most of all in this context is, rather than making these dramatic changes, because we see a lot of sweeping statements, I think, things that belong on the kitchen wall, like the live, laugh, love style stuff. And one of those is, if it's not a fuck yes, then it's a fuck no. And I'm like that's not realistic. Very few people live in a fuck yes life, right? We have to do things that are just what we have to do. But if you flip that and say, as long as it's not a fuck no, and that for me is more the point of like knowing ourselves and trusting ourselves enough to know when our body is telling us, no, this is not right for us, and listening and reacting to that. So rather than constantly putting ourselves aside and abandoning ourselves and not listening to our no and constantly prioritizing other people, learning what our no looks like and listening to that and taking action based on that will have a monumental impact on our health and well-being, because that ignoring the no is what's leading to burnout, leading to disconnection, dysregulation. So that's kind of a long process, and it doesn't happen overnight. But there are things, and this is what I talk about in the book, that you can do to help you get closer to your truth and trust yourself more and know when something is a no, and learn how to navigate your life based on that.
Yeah, of course. When you say learn how to say no, it can be quite difficult. But we're so trained to people please and say yes all the time. But do you not think there's an element of, when you're so far ingrained to playing that role, that you actually need to take some time out to kind of really think about, hold on a minute, I need to take a pause and really think about, who actually am I, and who am I pleasing? Who should I not be pleasing? How am I feeling? What's my body saying to me?
Yeah, and it can be grief work. Because when you start doing that and you start asking those big questions, it can be really painful to listen to the honest answer to them and really repair the relationship you have with yourself. Because so many of us have spent so much of our lives abandoning ourselves, and that can show up sometimes in really unhelpful behaviors. For me, it was addiction to alcohol and drugs, but for some people it's addiction to shopping or addiction to shitty relationships or whatever it might be, food, whatever. This process is about healing the relationship that you have with yourself, and it definitely requires space, time. In the book, there's a lot of exercises that help people to move through it, and if they read the book slowly or maybe return to it and go through it slowly. It's designed to really help deepen into the conversation that you have with yourself, just as a guide. But yeah, I mean, it's taken me a decade of deep work and constantly coming back to it to even feel remotely like I have any answers at all. And I definitely still don't have it all figured out.
Yeah. I know in the book you do talk about your addiction. Would you say it's part kind of biography a little bit and part unraveling and helping people? I don't want to call it a self-help book because there's so many people going on about self-help, and then you start thinking, okay, I need a self-help. I need self-help.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been down that path. Yeah, I've
Me-
read like hundreds of books, and then I'm kind of confused, and then I'm like, well, what do I do? And you're not really looking at your true self because you're looking at what other people's self-help is, maybe.
Exactly. And the intention behind the book is the opposite of that, because it's not about fixing yourself. It's about peeling back all of the layers that have been put upon you and that you've put upon yourself to find the truth of who you really are. And that looks different for everybody. So there isn't a winning formula. There isn't an action that you can take or a morning routine that you can take that will get you to this new and improved version of you. If anything, it's actually more of an unlearning of all of the ways that you think you need to be accepted and acceptable, to go back to just learning and understanding that who you really are is enough. And I had that same thing because I was such a self-help junkie, and realised one day when I was walking across the road in Brighton, was literally crossing the road, and I can see it so vividly in my mind, and just as I was walking across, just thinking, nobody actually knows how to be a human better than I do. And it was this sudden relief of, oh, okay, all of these people who've written all of these books telling me how to optimize my life and myself actually don't know how to be a human better than anyone else knows how to be a human. We're all just figuring it out. And I want people to read the book and feel like it's okay to experiment and to figure it out and explore and get curious, and not like there has to be a specific destination or that they need to improve themselves in some way by the end of it.
Yeah, you're right. There's so much, all these words, optimization, longevity, they're actually kind of getting on my nerves a bit now.
Yeah,
because
I bet.
I get it, but I just think humans are going to the point where when they start thinking about their health, it's like, how can I optimize my health? How can I focus on longevity? But it's almost like, well, no, just strip it back.
Yeah, get out of the way and your body will do it.
Yeah, live life and just get back to the basics, and all that will just come naturally.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's exactly it. And now that I'm almost at the end of my pregnancy, and I don't think that there's nothing in my life that I've done that's been more awe-inspiring than like 3D printing an entire human with my body. And it's fascinating, and thinking, I don't have to do anything. I have to give my body what it needs, the nutrients that it needs, and the rest that it needs. And the rest of it, it's just doing for itself. And that simplicity and connection to the magic of what already is what I really want us to understand about the wholeness of ourselves. Because all of this shit that we're told that we need to make us better and happier, and when we get to the next pay rise or the next number on the scale or whatever it might be, we'll feel better, and then we don't. And then we think it must be because we've done something wrong. It's because we're just constantly chasing something outside of ourselves, when actually we already have everything that we need within ourselves. And the same applies with the body. The body is already optimized. It's an incredible machine.
Do you think that the narrative of, well, many, many years ago, there was hardly any equality. They didn't really have many rights. And a lot of women fought for certain rights that we now, have and we live by. Do you think that obviously now that we can, go to work, we can vote and do all these amazing things that we should be able to do you think that the system hasn't quite caught up? So we're still kind of almost battling against this. We want to work, we want to achieve, but are we really thinking about that from the point of view of, do I really want to do that? Or now that I've got the right to do that, am I just kind of doing it for the sake of it? But yet the system doesn't support me to do that anyway, really. It's almost the system's setting me out to fail anyway.
Yeah, I was thinking about this recently, because actually, why think I was part of this conversation myself before deciding to become a mum, where I was maybe even quite judgmental about motherhood, like it was some kind of anti-feminist choice. And I've certainly heard that rhetoric a lot. And I'm thinking, like, why do we think that it's better to slave away for the man? Because even when you're self-employed, you're still trapped in this, on the whole, in this hustle, like capitalist culture. Why is that better than raising a child? Why is raising a child something that we're so dismissive of? And I feel like that's quite sad, because actually that's the simplicity again, that innate value of bringing life into the world and nurturing that life and being part of that life is totally dismissed as just something to throw over here. And if you choose to be a stay-at-home mum, you're almost scorned for it. And if not to shame any choice, I think choice is the most important part of all of it. But I don't know how often we stop to interrogate our dreams and ask whether they're actually ours, or whether that's what we think we need to do to, again, be accepted and also to prove that we are exceptional and that we do have the right to live and take up space in whatever way that might be.
It's so hard, because I know from experience when, I was working and then I gave up work to spend more time with my kids, because from my point of view, it was a personal choice, but I just didn't feel I was succeeding at either or. And I was getting burnt out and, corporate life. And making that choice felt like the hardest decision ever. And I felt like people were going to judge me. And I did get comments. Even my mum was like, you're giving up work. You're not going to work for the big blue anymore. And I'm like, is this what the thought process is now? This whole kind of drive to work and bring up your kids. It's crazy.
And we're told that we can have it all. And we never stop to think, do we even want it all? Because actually, most women I speak to desperately just want to have a break. Like, they don't want it all. When they really think about it, they don't want it all. They want someone else to come in and help them and take some of it off their plate. And this ridiculous notion that we can do everything and that we can be everything to everyone is so destructive. And it's no wonder that there are so many women reaching midlife having a really, really difficult time. And I was reading some research about this, because a lot of menopause and perimenopause symptoms are, rather than it being like the endocrine system, so rather than hormonal, it's the adrenal system, because we've been overloading ourselves for so long in this constant adrenal fatigue that when the hormones shift, we don't have the capacity to handle it in the way that our ancestors might have done. We don't have the lifestyle to be able to create more capacity to handle it. And then women are really suffering. And then you think, why? Like, when you really strip it back, it's like, was it worth it? Was that meeting really more important? Like, whatever it might be, is it really the most important thing? And it's terrifying to think of when your identity, as mine definitely has been, is so wrapped up in your job title and your success metrics based on societal idea of what that might look like.
Do you think social media has amplified all of this, because we're just constantly switched on now and we see lots of people on social media doing all sorts of things, optimizing their life,
optimizing everywhere,
optimizing everything, and taking this, taking that, and waking up at 5 a.m, exercising, whatever we're thrown at. There's so much stuff. Do you think that's made it worse?
I think social media has amplified everything. So good things or helpful things and unhelpful things can be a really great tool for connection and to reach people you might never have reached before. This podcast, for example, has the opportunity to go far further than it would have had otherwise. And at the same time, I think we get caught up in this influencer lie, because it is a lie, and think we need to be like that. We need to want that. And I was thinking about this recently, because with my book, I had the drive to go, okay, I need to get out there. I need to be, I guess, like a quasi-influencer, even though that makes my skin crawl a little bit. And then I stopped myself and was like, but I don't want to. I don't want to put my entire life on the internet. I don't want people to know every single thing that I'm doing at every single moment. And I don't want to stop a lovely experience to be like, 1 second, I just need to move my phone this way to get another angle. No, again, no shade if that's what people want to do, but I don't want to do that. I just never questioned myself whether that was something I actually wanted. I just went down that road because I thought that's what I should do. And then beat myself up about the fact that I wasn't doing it as well as all these other people, despite it not even being what I really wanted.
Do you think that the beauty standards, again, on social media, there's so much on there that women look at, and men equally, and think, I need to look like that, or especially it's driven massively by the influencer / and or celebrity, buy this supplement, buy this cream, it does wonders for you, or this protein powder, you're always being sold at, and then made to feel perhaps inadequate and think, oh, maybe I do need all these things to look like him or her.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because advertising and marketing for men is all about optimizing strength. So you're already really great, but don't worry, just a few tweaks and you'll be a really manly man. Whereas with women, it's always about correction. And in order to make us feel that we need correcting, they have to first make us feel like there's something wrong with us. And that is the marketing playbook. They sell us insecurity, or they dredge insecurity into us, and then they sell us the solution over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And social media is perfect for that. I don't think it's ever intentional for influencers to be part of that, but they are part of that. It's very intentional for brands to be doing that and marketing machines to be doing that. And really, when you start to understand that women's insecurities hold up multi-trillion-dollar industries, and without us buying into it, they just simply wouldn't exist.
No, they wouldn't.
You start to see, like, this is interesting because we're both the product and we are the one funding it. And hang on a second. Nobody is actually benefiting from this apart from, of course, the organizations that are benefiting from this. So I do think that it is an act of rebellion for women to go, I'm not buying into this. But it also is really hard. It is so cleverly seeped into every single part of our culture. And it's not just in advertising, it's in films, it's in the stories that have been told for centuries. It's in so much expectation of what it means to be a worthy woman. And opting out of that is really, really scary and can be really lonely. But the alternative is just to continue to fund a system that benefits from your deeply entrenched insecurity and never ever feeling good enough, because you won't feel good enough when you've optimized yourself into peak health at all, if that's the reason that you're doing it. Like, amazing if the reason that you're doing it is for how you feel, your health, your fitness. That's fantastic. But if it's because you think it's going to make you somehow more worthy, then you're not going to feel more worthy when you get there.
Yeah. Also, like beauty brands, makeup, skincare. I don't know the ins and outs of what's in these products, but I think it's making women feel like they need to change their appearance. Now everyone's changing their appearance using makeup, like contouring. And I mean, these were things that I can't remember it being around when I was growing up.
No.
I really can't. Now it's like it's quite intense.
It's intense, and what's even more apparent is how many people are physically changing their appearance with augmentations. I mean, when you think, what's it called? The stuff that they put in Botox is one of the most poisonous chemicals in the world. Wow. And we're just like willy-nilly putting it into our face. And it's safe enough. It is safe enough. But
I suppose the dose they use is it must have.
And I think it's something to do with the fact that it goes only into like the first few layers of the epidermis. So it doesn't go into the bloodstream, something like that. But it's alarming. And the amount of times these things can go wrong. And also, most people look much better in their natural state. But it breaks my heart a little bit, because if you actually think about the amount of energy that we spend as women on optimizing our appearances and feeling bad about ourselves when we don't hit that expectation or what we think the expectation is. And instead, if we channeled all of that energy into something really positive for the collective good, like what we would be capable of. Absolutely. And when I really start to think about that, that's when it becomes like almost conspiracy level. And I talk about this in my book, because I'm like, I don't think that this is just about deliberately getting our money. I think this is also about deliberately keeping us small and compliant Because if we realized our power, then it would be a total fuckery for these people who benefit from 99% plus of the world being lacking the power that the 1% have. And so if we did wake up, then the 1% wouldn't be the 1% for very much longer.
It's funny you say conspiracy theories. It's as I'm getting older, I've got so many conspiracy theories in my head.
Yeah.
I don't say them openly. Obviously, they're not, I can't prove. But in my head, I'm thinking, I think there's an agenda here. There's a deeper agenda here of some sort.
If you're a data person, which I think you are, and if you are someone who can look at the bigger picture and unite the different threads, I would say that there is evidence for this because it's not a tangential leap to go, hang on a second, these systems which we know are oppressive are directly being held up by spending power, which is directly linked to this constant need to make ourselves better. What?
Yeah. And I'd say because I am on social media quite a lot when I'm posting the podcast and so on. And I come across so much AI generated stuff, people selling skincare products. I've recently come across that on the back of it, actually, there's no doctor, there's no nothing. They've put Cosmopolitan, Glamour magazine, whatever logos on it. I even emailed Cosmo UK and said, have you endorsed this product? Because it doesn't look real to me. They came back saying, no, it's definitely not us. Might be the US. US haven't got back to me yet. But it takes time to do all this research. It takes so much time. People haven't got the time for it. But what I do say is, if you're going to buy anything from a social media post, anything, whether it's a supplement, skincare, makeup, I don't know, whatever, downloading a sheet of information on a recipe, you need to check, is that person real? And is that company real? And are the people real behind it? Because some of these companies I've found that they're definitely not.
It's really alarming.
People are just making money off it somehow.
It's really alarming. And I think it's really important to verify brands and verify claims for sure, particularly if you're putting something in your body. I had it recently where I ordered, I don't know what you'd call it, like a face massager, I guess, which has UV lights in it. And it is really great. I ended up buying a different one because I bought it and it showed up and I was like, something about this seems really dodgy. And if this electrical appliance blew up or malfunctioned on my face, that's quite alarming, the idea of it. So I ended up buying one from a legit place. But I'd bought that in the first place on some dopamine click, 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 buy here moment, which we've all had, right? We've all had those I need this thing and not even necessarily remembered buying it. And that, I think, is where you've just got to be really careful, particularly around your health and your face and your body. And again, with babies too, you need to be really careful about that because there's so much stuff that gets targeted now.
Absolutely.
This is the miracle that will definitely have your child sleep. We all want that.
Can you talk a bit about the moment where you had that change yourself? I know in the book you talk about you went from a dark space in your life and then you flipped that around. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I went through really tricky breakup and it was a really tricky relationship. It was very toxic on both sides, and also we both had this quite extreme, actually, when I think back on it, addiction to cocaine, and was just completely pretending everything in life was just fake. And on the outside I looked like I had everything that you could want, really. I was head of my department for an agency in Brighton. I owned a flat that overlooked the city. It was a stunning flat. This relationship that looked great on social media. But inside I was just totally empty and doing more and more drugs, drinking more and more alcohol. And it all fell apart in a very dramatic way. And at the same time, I met this woman who became my business partner. Because everything had fallen apart, I thought I didn't have anything to lose. So I ended up starting a business with her. And we very quickly made it a great success because even when I was a raging drug addict, I was still a high achiever. I was a high achieving drug addict. And so again, on the face of it, everything like, wow, you've turned this horrible breakup into something amazing so quickly. But actually my behavior was still continuing to spiral. And I was lying a lot about it and My business partner was getting more and more concerned, I would say. We didn't know each other very well at all. And so she had a bit of a baptism of fire because she bought into the exterior version of me and quite quickly realised the truth that was under the surface. And it all came to a head one day when we had very early on in our business the potential for investment. And it was someone she knew from her previous work. And so we went to meet up with her. And I came in late, completely disheveled, probably had about 20 minutes sleep. And this woman just looked at me like, what the hell? Who is this woman? And so after the meeting, and I think I was very quiet, she emailed my business partner, Alice, and said, you're amazing. I've always believed in you, but I can't invest in you. And you need to think really carefully about this woman that you're in business with because she's a complete liability. I was the liability. And I don't think anyone had ever been that like brutally honest before. And so Alice took me for a walk down Brighton seafront and she said something that was so generous, particularly considering the situation. She said, you're like a light that's covered in blankets. And I can still see the light under the blankets, but it's still in there, but you just need to really do the work of getting the blankets off. She's like, not for me, not because I feel angry about any of this, but for yourself, because you really do have this incredible light in there that would be such a shame if you don't learn how to shine it properly for yourself. And it just was a combination of all of those things. I guess the kindness, the shock of a shock of being called out so blatantly, and also just feeling like if I don't sort myself out now, then this is only going to go one way. So that was the moment that I decided I was going to do the work to heal the relationship that I had with myself, and took up every kind of therapy you could think of, a shaman banging a drum over me and like wafting my aura with a feather. And at one point I had a woman was like pulling the cage apart around my heart. And then I also had some like, more conventional talk therapy as well. But I just tried everything because I was really in a privileged position as well, because I had the money and the resources to do that. And that process of learning about who I was a complete game changer for me. And that's really the inspiration for Beyond Palatable, because I know that not very many people have the luxury of being able to experience all these different modalities. So I wanted to put the ones that worked best for me into the book to give people a flavour to then maybe at one point, if they wanted to, they could go and explore it more in depth, because I'm not a therapist in any way. But it's just to give access to different ideas that really helped me.
That's fantastic. I think definitely, I haven't finished the book. I think whatever stage in life you're at, I think it's so important to take a step back. And it's not a one-time thing. I think it's important to do it at different stages of your life. Take that time to, if you can take a day off work, then do that. Right? You don't need to spend like thousands of pounds going on a retreat to find yourself, right? You can do it for free.
And actually, some of the most potent times were when I was just on my own, lying on the bedroom floor, listening to a meditation and just giving myself space. And one of the most challenging things about healing from drug addiction, recovering from drug addiction, is that the nature of addiction is that you can't trust yourself, because the amount of times that you break your word to yourself. I mean, the amount of times you break your word to others, but to yourself particularly, because you really, really believe today I'm going to be sober. And then you find yourself at 5 a.m. having used again. And it's that constant cycle is a degradation of your sense of self. So having that time and process, and I think addiction is an extreme example, or drug addiction is an extreme example, but we all have that. Whether it's that we said we were going to speak up for ourselves and we didn't, or we said we were going to quit our job and do the thing that we've been dreaming of for years, but we didn't. Like, we all have those moments where we don't do what we say we're going to do for ourselves. And spending time with ourselves is uncomfortable, but also so necessary to rebuild that relationship and that trust.
Why do you think you got to that space in the first place?
With being completely detached from myself. I think it definitely stemmed from childhood trauma and from unhealed crap. But I also think it came from mistakenly believing that fitting in was the same thing as belonging. And I always wanted to feel like I belonged, because I always felt like an outsider and like I was a weirdo. And funnily enough, now as an adult, I feel like my weirdo-ness is actually my blessing. I don't feel like that now.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I always felt like I was on the outside. And so I would do whatever I thought would make me fit in. And when I discovered alcohol and drugs, I was only about 14. That was like a real easy way to fit in, because it gave me that in with the troubled kids. Now in hindsight, I can look back and say that I was also troubled and actually really toxic myself. And there was a lot of things that I did in those relationships that I wouldn't do now and that I have learned from. But it's amazing how you can become a magnet to what you believe you deserve. And for me, I believed that I didn't deserve anything. So I attracted these things, and I attracted so much drama. It's like constant drama. And now I'm just like, I don't want any drama.
Stay away from drama.
Anything. And I can have compassion for people without feeling like I need to rescue them as well, which in the past I never used to, because rescuing people made me feel like I was worthy as well. Now I'm just like, I hope that you heal, but I really can't be around this.
Yeah. What advice would you give for women that really want to take some time out to reflect? How would they do that, and what kind of pointers would you give them?
It's tricky, especially for a lot of us who have multiple different roles that we play.
Yeah.
It needs to be a non-negotiable. So whatever is feasible for you and your capacity to create that space needs to be something that you can actually stick to. Because again, if you say, I'm going to give myself this time and then you don't, that's another way that you're chipping at your self-trust. So it needs to be something that you can honor, that you can hold yourself in that, and know that it's going to be really uncomfortable, and that actually it probably needs to be. Going out for dinner by yourself or going to the cinema isn't really enough, or having a bubble bath isn't really enough. It needs to be deep enough and for a long enough period of time for you to really give yourself time for reflection. If you can afford it and it's within your means, get some help, because for me, I would never have been able to get to this point without the support of many, many, many different people along the way. But the main thing is to take the first step and really know that you're worth taking that first step, even if you don't believe it. So even if you're thinking, I'm not, do it anyway, and get curious about what might open up as you go. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's, I would say that's probably in the last 10 years, that's like my baseline has come now to, I'm actually very, very good at pushing myself past my comfort zone. And I do it all the time, like pretty much every single day. My job requires that, and that's where the growth happens. That's where the greatest lessons happen. Just know that it's not supposed to be comfortable. We're fed this really bizarre idea of what life is supposed to be like, and part of that is convenience and comfortability, and it's not supposed to be comfortable. We've got all of these neurochemicals that are literally only triggered when things are uncomfortable. So that's just obviously part of how we're supposed to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we really need to go back to basics as well.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's just become so complicated.
Yeah.
Like, so complicated. When you're constantly looking at complication, your life's going to end up being complicated.
And that's actually a really good point. If all you do is say, right, once a week, I'm going to go for an hour to nature, and I'm not going to take a phone, and I'm going to do... So actually a really easy thing that you can do to stop your wandering mind is to do a colour walk. So say, okay, this week I'm going to go and I'm going to look for different shades of green, and just go out and notice all of the different shades of green.
Yeah.
This week I'm going to look for purple. This week I'm going to look for yellow. The sense of connection that you will feel just from consciously choosing to connect with nature, that's the simplicity.
Yeah.
Because you are already wired for this. You just need to remember that you are.
I love that. I never thought about that, actually, looking for colours.
Yeah.
Because that actually opens up quite a lot of senses.
Yeah.
You're not just aimlessly walking around, you're actually actively looking and getting quite intrigued.
And you can do that in cities as well, just to try and do it without a podcast on, or try and do it without your phone in your hand. Just really, even if just for 10 minutes, just really going for 10 minutes. All I'm going to do is pay attention and look for the colour.
Yeah, absolutely. Sophie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been fantastic to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope it's been useful for your listeners as well.
Thank you.